Here we go. So welcome to Random Dialogues number 53. I'm joined today by lovely Joanne McGowan, and she's here because she didn't know. She didn't know, and now Joe does know. Joe, what didn't you know?
Well,
Welcome.
I didn't. Welcome. Yes, lovely to be here this morning. Yeah, it's a good day, nice and sunny outside, which is always good. So yeah. But what didn't I know? Well, what didn't I know? I didn't know really anything about the menopause, and quite shockingly, probably 3-4 years ago, I'd never even heard of the term perimenopause. Never heard of it. But that is something that we all go through. Some of us sail through it with no symptoms, and some of us, unfortunately, like myself, don't have a number of symptoms. And I think I was actually just really shocked that that I'd got to my 40s and I wasn't prepared at all. I knew nothing about the menopause. I didn't know even the term perimenopause. I didn't know what that could mean for me in my 40s going into my 50s, and felt really unprepared. And I suppose that's why I'm sort of wanted to come and chat with you today, because I think, having spoken to a lot of other friends, colleagues, connections that I've got, I'm not the only one, and a lot of people don't know anything about it, certainly don't know enough before going into it to get themselves ready for it. And I feel that we need to talk about it, and we need to let people know so that they can be prepared and can perhaps, go through it in a way that is manageable. So that's why I'm here.
Fabulous. Yes, because it wasn't taught at school. I've been
No.
reading a little bit around it. Apparently it is on some national curriculums now.
They're starting to, in the way that, obviously, like sort of periods and pregnancy and that sort of thing is taught within schools. I believe, same as you, that menopause, they are starting to add, that into some of that sort of health education that is done.
Yeah. And typically, I think most of us growing up just thought it was, are we going to get hot sweat?
Yeah.
I thought it was just hot sweats. Oh,
yeah,
with that.
It's hot sweats, and you go a little bit crazy for a while. That's the classic stereotyped view, isn't it, of what a menopausal woman is? And I have to say, probably out of the range of symptoms that is listed, and there is a big range of symptoms, hot flushes, I've not had one.
Right.
So that's not always the case that you get hot flushes, but equally I have friends who that is their main symptom, and that's really debilitating as well. So
yeah. So are you able to share a little bit about what did happen?
So I suppose it started, I was about 43, so I'm 46 now, so it's about 3-4 years ago. I'd just been on a bit of a health journey. I'd broken my ankle the year before. I was overweight, and when I came out of recovery from my broken ankle, I thought, I'll all be fine now and everything. And I started suffering from really bad anxiety. And I put that down to the broken ankle, recovering from that, being a bit nervous about, being back on my feet, which is what my blog's called.
Yes.
And I put it down to that. But then, and I had some CBT counselling, online counselling for that, which really helped. But I was suffering with really bad IBS. I've suffered with IBS all my sort of adult life. And it was just the point I thought, I've got to do something about this. This is making me miserable. It's stopping me enjoying life in the way I want to. So I went on a really big sort of health kick, I suppose, really. Sorted my eating out. I saw a nutritionist. I managed to get sort of symptom free of IBS. So it was all going well. And I lost probably about 2 to 3 stone in the course of a year.
Wow.
And then I started to notice, I'd been tracking my periods, which is probably my first big top tip, is from your 30s onwards, track your periods so that you know what is happening with those. So my periods had always been really regular. I mean, almost to the day each month I knew. So I was lucky in that way. I never sort of had those sort of issues, really. And relatively, it was a nuisance each month, but it didn't really cause me a lot of problems. But what I was noticing, my periods were getting further and further apart. And they was getting a bit lighter as well. And I thought, okay, well, what is this? What could this be? And I spoke to my doctor about it, and they said, well, I think you're a bit young for it to be menopausal yet, which is, again, another big myth that, because there are, we all think it's something that happens to women in their 50s. And that's not necessarily so. And lots of people I've spoken to, it's happened in their 40s and even earlier, they've started symptoms. And he said, well, it could be that you've lost a fair bit of weight, and there's less of you for your hormones. Your hormones have got to have time to adjust to the fact there's less of you. So I didn't think much of it and sort of went away. But again, I was getting a period every 3 months, which was not right for me. That wasn't what I'd been having before. And then I remember it was a September evening. I'd been working during the day, and I'd said to my husband first thing in the morning, right, I'm going out this evening. I'm going to an exercise class, and I'm coming back. I'm going to have a shower, grab a quick bite to eat, and then I'm off to it. It was a choir social that I was going to, and I said, so I'm going to need to have a shower in between. And he was like, oh, okay, that's great. Yeah, see you later, sort of thing. And I got back home, and he was in the bathroom, and he was, bless him, cleaning the grouting on the bathroom, and a job that none of us want to do, but he was getting stuck in there.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, but I need to have a shower. He goes, well, you can't have a shower, but you can have a bath. That's fine. And I hit the roof. I mean, literally ranting, raving. And as I'm doing it, my voice in my head is saying, you're being totally unreasonable here. What are you doing? But I couldn't stop myself. It literally. And I think my husband was a bit like, oh my God. Anyway, I mean, obviously I apologized to him later and all that sort of thing, but it was then afterwards, I just thought, something came in my head, and I thought the only other time I felt that out of control of my rage was when I was a teenager. And then just something connected, and I thought, it's hormones. It's got to be hormones. So I then went back to my GP and actually saw a different GP who I've seen a lot, as a wonderful female GP. And we talked it through, and she said, I think you probably are perimenopausal, but she said, you're quite young. So she said, let's get to 6 months. Because she said, if it being that young, if your hormones are that depleted, we may need to top them up, because, they shouldn't be that low. And then I didn't really understand all of that, but then I started to do a bit of research, obviously found out what perimenopause is, and that's basically the time leading up to you being postmenopausal. So the menopause is actually only 1 day of your life, which was something I didn't know. So it's basically, the menopause is the date 12 months from your last period.
Right.
That's when your menopause is.
And never heard that
before that, you are perimenopausal, and after that, you are postmenopausal. Didn't know that at all, but so I was perimenopausal. So, and what she sort of said. So I was sort of going through all of the, up to 6 months, and the problem is that we don't realise, I think, either that the hormone estrogen is not just a reproductive hormone. We don't just need that to be able to reproduce and have babies and stuff. It is actually a crucial hormone for so many other functions in the body. So cognitive function, bone health, cardiac health, that's just a few of the things that it is actually really important that our levels are where they should be for our age. Now, obviously, over time, they will deplete. But if they've depleted too early, then you could start to have problems in other areas that could be long-term health problems. And that's why my GP had said, well, we may need to top you up quite early on, basically. So that was a bit, I think it's the shock of it all when you're not expecting something like that, and then you're suddenly reading about it. And I think it was more, I felt embarrassed that, how did I not know this stuff? I consider myself quite clued up. And I think, how have I not even heard of that term? And how did I not know that this hormone is so important throughout our life, not just when we're younger and need it if we're going to have children, basically.
Wow.
So, yeah.
We just joined. Thank you, Katie, for being with us. So we're live streaming onto LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So if you are watching us, hello, and thank you for being with us. So this is a random dialogue with Jo McGowan called Why Did I Not Know This? So Jo's speaking about her journey with the menopause, and also how she would like to support others on their journey, or we'd love you to join our conversations, and these conversations can go on after this session as well. Follow us for next steps. And Jo, yes, certainly the things you've just shared, I don't know about.
I don't know lots. It's crazy, isn't it? And again, you are somebody that I consider, you're very knowledgeable, you're very curious, and you investigate things. but it's just not even in our
No,
psyche
no,
to know
no.
about these things.
No.
And
I
if
remember
we
my
don't
mum.
know as women, then we can't expect the other half of the population, the male side, to
No.
know these things either, you know. So
And I have been doing a little bit of research. You know, I've obviously watched some programs in the last year since we've been chatting. I have been doing some more research, so I sort of felt I'd come on here a little bit more prepared. But what you've just shared wasn't some of the stuff I found out.
Yeah.
I remember my mum, she won't mind me sharing this, you know, had a menopause during her 40s and was having a really, I just remember her going just a bit crazy.
Yeah.
She went into HRT, it just transformed her. She said it was the best thing, Jane, going onto HRT. And it just, her hair grew again, her skin was better, she just felt all around better. And she was on it for a good number of years. And one day she gets that call, that panicked call from the doctor, and there's that scare around HRT. So she came off it that day, came off it. She said her life was never the same again. And she just wasn't well with it. And then she tried to go back on it once they'd sort of realized that it wasn't having such a bad side, it wasn't having the side effects, but she said it never impacted her positively again. And also, but the fallout is osteoporosis, and that's what scares me, is the osteoporosis.
Basically, I mean, I think as well, I remember my mum going through it. My mum went through it when I was in my late teens, when I was probably at my most teenage hormonal. So that was my poor dad at that time.
I know.
And I don't think either of us realised what was going on. You know, none of us knew. So I think that was, obviously, HRT got a really bad rap, probably 20 years ago. But now it's very different. It's sort of body identical HRT, which you can get in gels and patches and all, you know, there are different ways of doing it. So I suppose the other thing that I probably learned on the journey is it's not a one size fits all approach.
Okay.
So I went on to HRT. So basically, I'd been tracking symptoms using an app called the Balance app, which is a Dr. Louise Newson, who's actually, if you've seen the Davina McCall documentary, she's on that quite a bit and that sort of thing. And I think she's doing a menopause thing on This Morning actually as well. So that's a really good app. You can track your symptoms. And what I did was I tracked my symptoms and then printed it off to take to my GP so that they could see, because again, HRT, you know, the diagnosis for perimenopause and for whether you need HRT should be symptom based rather than blood test based a lot of the time, because if you're still having periods, even if they're irregular, the blood test might show good estrogen levels at certain times of the month, so it can be very hit and miss. So they actually, the NICE guidelines recommend that it's symptoms based, any treatment. So this checker is really useful. So I'd done that. I'd taken that to the GP, and she was very clued up on it all. And she said, yes, I think you could benefit from going on HRT. So I went on gel to start with a progesterone tablet, but estrogen gel. And to begin with, that seemed to work. I felt a lot better for about 6 to 8 months. Then I started to notice I was feeling worse again. So I went back to my GP and said, look, this is where I'm at with my symptoms. And she said, right, I think we need to increase the dose of your estrogen. So I increased the estrogen gel. Now, this was all during the pandemic. So you weren't going in to see your doctor. It was over the phone and stuff like that. And I didn't realize that when you put the gel on, if you're having more than one pump per side, you need to put them on different areas of your body. So I was putting 2 pumps on my arm and 2 pumps, and it wasn't absorbing it. So basically my symptoms didn't get any better. And we got to the autumn and I was feeling bad. And then she said, it just sounds like you're not absorbing it. Let's switch you to patches. So I went on to patches and really started to feel much better quite quickly. Then went to get my next prescription, and they hadn't got that brand. They couldn't get that brand for me. So they said, oh, well, let's swap you onto a different brand. So I did that. And I hadn't realized at the time, but then I started to feel a lot worse very quickly. And it hadn't connected that it was because of the change of patches, basically. And this was around about last November last year. And I have to say, it's probably the worst I've ever felt. I felt so down and I was basically experiencing literally no joy for anything, even stuff that I really enjoyed doing. And you know me, I'm a very social person. Stuff like that, I had to force myself to do because I thought, what's the alternative? If I don't do stuff that I know I would normally enjoy, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
And anything negative, I would have a really extreme reaction to, in terms of it making me feel really down and stuff. And I, at this point, had been referred to a menopause specialist GP on the NHS, which again is a bit hit and miss whether you can get referred to them depending on where you are. But actually, it got to the end of November, and I actually remember one afternoon being in tears, and my husband was around, and he was, I said to him, I feel so awful and I don't know why. And I remember uttering the phrase, if this is life, what life's going to be like, I'm not sure that's what I want. Cool. And actually, I caught that thought and thought, expletive, that's quite a scary thought to be having. And my husband sort of looked and he said, you need to get a private appointment. I said, but it's 300 quid. He said, you need to go and see a private specialist this week, because he said, you can't go on like that. It's not fair on you. So I did see a private specialist, and the private specialist was really good in that, you obviously got an hour to talk through your symptoms. She looked at some blood test results that I'd had fairly recently, and she did a quick calculation. She said, your estrogen, I think it was something like 120, 125. She said, for a woman of your age, it should be between 250 and 500. She said, that's why you're feeling so rubbish. She said, you're not very mad.
No.
That is why. That level, she said, it's on the floor for somebody of your age, she said. And she said, it's obviously you are not absorbing estrogen in any way, shape or form that you should be. So she gave me a private prescription for the patches I was on previously. And actually, private prescriptions are not that much more than NHS prescriptions. And she did it through an online pharmacy concierge. So they would deliver to my door literally the next day. So I went back onto them, immediately started to feel a bit better. I think psychologically, just thinking, I know what's going on now. But also I think just getting on the right thing, started to feel better. And then actually I was able to get it prescribed via the NHS when I saw the NHS specialist. And again, did that through a pharmacy concierge, an online pharmacy concierge. It's the same prescription price, it doesn't cost any more, but it gets delivered straight to you. And I think the difference with that to going to Boots or one of the chain pharmacies is that Boots or the chains have their own distribution centre. So if they're out of stock there, they're not going anywhere else. Whereas I think the online ones go direct to the suppliers. So they have, that's what I found, because I know that there are a lot of people struggling to get their brand, and that can make such a difference. But I went back in January and had more blood tests done, and my estrogen levels were still very low. So it's increased my dose now, and I'm due to actually have an appointment tomorrow. Because although certain things have changed, I feel I now have different symptoms. So I still don't feel I'm quite where I need to be. And that's the thing. You need to give things time, and you need to, it is a journey, unfortunately. It's not an overnight quick fix solution, any of this. So
no. Well, thank you for sharing with me today, and thank you for joining us. Everybody who's been watching, and if you watch now or later, thank you. We'd love, we'll still carry on the conversations. Jo, I was going to say, we talked a little bit about the next steps now, what's next. So I'll just put up the little notes that we've just to remember. So if you want to share what your next steps are.
Yeah, so for me, it is trying to get my symptoms under control. So obviously I've gone down the HRT route. I don't feel that's quite right for me yet. It's also trying to live a good lifestyle, so diet and exercise. Now that can be problematic because, some of the symptoms can be aches and pains, can be lack of motivation and all that sort of thing. So it's trying to find what works for you. And that can be really tough when you're going through some quite big changes. So that's still, it's a work in progress for me at the moment, that side of things. But I think talking a bit more openly about it so that we, it's almost like it's a secret. And until we're actually in it and really suffering, we're not talking about it and we're not knowing where to turn or what to do. So that's really what I'm quite passionate about, is sharing my story. There's been a lot of high profile people that have been sharing their stories, which is great because it gets that attention. But I think ordinary people sharing their stories is really important too, because we can identify with that, and better understanding particularly of symptoms, really, that it's not just hot flushes, it's not just going a little bit, you know, crazy for a bit and mood swings and all that sort of thing. You know, my main symptoms were low mood, lack of motivation. Tinnitus was something that's come on during the menopause for me. So things like that, you know, joint pain, it can be all manner of stuff, and brain fog as well. You know, I will have conversations even now where I'll be midway through and think, what on earth am I going with? Where am I going with this? You know, so there's lots of symptoms. So have a look at those, because, you know, it can be a range of things. And also the age range that can experience it. I think still we think it's late 40s into our 50s that's when it's going to start. And actually for me, it was much earlier than that. And I know people that have been even earlier than that. So, and that symptoms and the treatment that you need can change. So it's not just a question of getting on something and staying on it. You may need to decrease doses. You may need to try different types, but also the things that you can do in your lifestyle that can, you know, help manage those symptoms. So there's a lot of natural remedies and stuff that can help, but also diet, lifestyle, and doing stuff for you, the mindfulness aspects of life as well, that can really help support whatever sort of treatment route that you decide to go if you're experiencing, you know, debilitating symptoms, really. So yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jo. And I put up here how we can connect with you if you want to carry on the conversations with Jo. So Jo's on LinkedIn and on Instagram as at getahead.surrey. And I'll put the links in the comments for each platform as well. And if you want to follow, this has been hashtag Random Dialogues 53. So Random Dialogues is a platform for something and nothing often, but also I kind of use the strapline, where are you called to dare to make a difference? So hopefully, Jo, by sharing today, you know, whoever's tuned in, watched, hopefully, you know, someone's connected with us and it's making a difference or will have an impact. Who knows where? You never know with these things, do you? So thank you so much for joining me this morning.
It's been a pleasure. Really nice to chat with you.
And to our viewers as well, if you've joined us, thank you. I'll end the broadcast now.
Bye.
Bye.